Good afternoon, everybody. I thought I'd drop in for a moment. Storms that have been forming all throughout the USA. Do you guys not realize that there's a potential of an explosive event through these storms that could take place over the last couple of days? Some of the moisture consolidation has been incredible, especially over the entire southern region of the USA. If not for that high pressure system, we'd be in trouble. And if it begins to weaken, we're going to have an unreasonable amount of rain taking over the southern half of the USA. Now that's a lot of rain, because at its rate, just by trending it, if the high pressure does not disrupt what's happening, you're looking at 10 inches of rain per hour in certain spots of Texas and all the way to Georgia and Virginia, believe it or not. It is estimated that if a high pressure system does not form, they will be getting about 7 inches of rain in less than probably a couple of hours. So that's a pretty heavy rain event, pretty big rain event. This entire weather system is a prelude to what will eventually, I think today is a good example of what will eventually form over the earth. By that, I mean stagnant storms. Imagine a storm like it is right now. If you can look at the radar of the active weather systems right now, you'll notice little to no lateral movement, right? It's almost like they're stagnant, but they're building. They're still building. They're not going anywhere, but they're building. Can you imagine that? A rainstorm or a series of storms stuck over the USA that continue to build and build and build and build, and it continues to rain, but they're not going anywhere. They're just staying there. And so that phenomena we will most certainly see. High pressure systems are a relief for storms. They carry dry winds, right? They rotate in the opposite direction, by the way, than a low pressure system. And so they dry out the storm. Without a high pressure system, the earth would be covered with water. The whole earth would be a swamp. That's what we'd be. So the high pressure system forming now, hopefully it gains strength, just a little more strength. And believe me, it has enough. Just one system has enough to wipe out a series of storms. They're also known to push hurricanes away. They're known to just literally change the entire scope of weather that can be expected. So they are a good thing to a degree. But what we see happening now with the weather, these stagnant storms that are building, they're not weakening, they're building. We could see a lot of water come from this storm. We really could. Really could. And that would be, that's going to be an issue. Plus, they've been tracking vertical winds coming from this buildup. Of course, when storms are stagnant like that, you have uplift, especially from the warmer temperatures of the surface. You have updrafts. These updrafts can strengthen fast and drop pretty big size hail everywhere, right? So it brings the potential of some pretty devastating storms. But again, today is a good example of what we will experience next year over the whole earth. So one day, it could be one whole month, we're going to see storms just like that form. They're not going to move for days. I mean, for days. You guys do understand what would happen if that took place. That'd be terrible, terrible. Also, did you guys see the meteorite? The one that slammed into the ground? Maybe they didn't show it. I'm not talking about the green one, the one that had that aerial burst a couple of days ago. No, I'm talking about the one from last night. They were tracking some things, and one exploded in the ground. Two landed in the ocean. And so we're also getting closer and closer and closer to a time of where it's unavoidable, where these rocks are going to start slamming into land masses. And they will increase. It's very difficult in the landscape of YouTube, it's very difficult to explain the binary system model, right? in a true way. For example, let me just give you guys just a small example. Everybody in the Bible, they always end up with a question of who are the Nicolaitans, right? And that's what people say. Who are the Nicolaitans? Who are the Nicolaitans? The Nicolaitans were mentioned thousands of years ago, and they carried on all the way up into the time of Revelation, obviously, and to the time we're in right now. A lot of knowledge has been purposely lost, right? Purposely lost. Do you guys know that a long time ago, that every single mythology was based on our two suns? Did you know that? It was based on two suns, not one, two. Two suns. All that mythology, all that mythos was explained in some of these highly guarded texts, right? But they carried maps. They had some pretty accurate maps of the solar system. They knew that the planets and everything else were going around the sun, but they said our sun went around something else. Yeah. They won't, they're not going to bring this out freely. It's not like they're going to point to you where this is. And so it's going to be bought out anyway. It will. I think it's important that people understand that they based a model of what they saw every single 5 years, right? And that the Earth, the axis of the Earth, if you just simply take the axis of the Earth, why is it always pointing in one direction? And you find out what direction it's pointing in. That axis is maintained at. You can do a simple, model by pencil, paper, and apply celestial mechanics to rotation and inertia, and you'll start to see it yourself. You'll start to see a focal point that's offset from the sun. Because the sun carries 99% of the mass, but it does not carry angular momentum. It only carries a tiny percent of angular momentum. That's impossible. And so they do, when they do celestial mechanics, they have a lot of made up numbers, compensation numbers, right? Because they don't want to entertain the binary model. It's a funny thing when you put the other sun back in there. You don't have to adjust any formulas for the modeling to work anymore. It's perfect. And so we're going to see it anyway. People are going to see that anyway. They will see an evil constellation. It's a constellation they're not familiar with. It's coming forward. They're not familiar with it. We will start to see 3 dim lights that will become highly visible in 3 different colors. One red, one blue, one almost like an emerald to yellow color. They'll get brighter and brighter. And that will be the onset of the cycle that people have been looking for a long time. Except you're going to be living right in the middle of it, of this cycle. So, you will see, the evidence out there. Now, as far as explanation, as far as experts, to be honest with you, there are no experts right now because they suppress the information. If the right people had the right information, they could quickly make adjustments to their own personal insights and start to see, the facts of what we're facing. It is unavoidable, though it's also a cycle that's natural, and it's also naturally destructive, right? It's just very destructive. That and a few more things, right, we'll start to face. We're going to have a lot of conversations concerning these topics because this information is not bought out. If we can provide a basis of some honest data, right, that will be good for everybody out there who does research on these planets and the end times and things of that nature. It would be an excellent element they could add into their scope, their view of things, and their picture could be, quite refined, very refined. Interesting things. Somebody says blue star. Well, I'm familiar with the red star, blue star. The blue star is the announcer, and the red star is the actual destroyer. You know that, right? You do know that. That's what they are. One's a destroyer. Well, let me explain it to you this way. And one is it has to do with poles, the North Pole and the South Pole, which is why that's from Hopi, by the way, north and the red and blue Kachinas. That's from the Hopi tribes. But also it's very important to note that wherever they appear from, right, is going to determine destruction or peace. And just like Gehenna, wherever he, whatever land he shows himself in, destruction or peace. So these things are they're conditional. They're very conditional. And at the end times, even in the Hopi tribes or the Hopi religion, they believe that at the end times, the position of the earth will designate if it's going to be destruction or if it's going to be, a little more peaceful transition. Either way, it is interesting to note that every single prophecy of the Hopis has come to pass. That is funny. That's funny, isn't it? But see, here's what a lot of people don't know. The Hopi religion, if you, well, they're not alive right now, but some of the folks who are alive right now actually talk to some of the elders. And the elders will tell you that somebody came over here in America. Somebody gave them a word. Somebody gave them a testament. And it wasn't about the snake people. And it had them kind of push off what they believed in before, right? And they did not stick with it. And there was a era of repentance. An era of repentance. So it's a very interesting thing. Now, that was a split in the Hopis period because you had some people that stayed with the old traditions, but then you had some people who went with this other figure was so in tune with everything, right? So in tune. And this figure left them with something physical. It's quite amazing. They still have it to this day. They have it to this very day. Left them with something. And he said when he returns across many lands, those things will be completed. Yeah. But he is not part of their history. He kind of just popped out of nowhere, and he will return again. But he gave them the conditions of his return, which is just like, well, you guys are familiar with it. Before he returns, the earth is going to be in terrible condition. The people are going to be ethically corrupt and morally corrupt, right? Things will be backwards. They're going to call good evil and evil good. Many things people would have taken for granted. The lands are going to be all poisoned, and everything else in war is going to be a great factor during this time. And it is said that people will hide themselves in the caverns. This is in the Hopi religion, that people would hide themselves in the caverns and in the rocks, and they would say to those caverns, into the rocks of those caverns, to fall on them. That sound familiar? That's it. I'm not the one who's the author of that information. That information's already there. I just find it amazing. But they have the same things you hear John say are etched in stone. And again, it's not something they want to see to come. They don't want to see that to come, but it's coming. So you had some people, even in the USA, that made a transition based upon a figure that came to see them, right? And then you had some that did not. So with the Hopi religion, you have the original Hopi religion, and then you have those who took up the new promise, I guess you could say. But that figure is coming back. It's coming back. Coming back. Somebody said blue-starred announcer like a blue-eyed saint. No. I never saw that before. Listen, there are a lot of New Age publishers that they publish just about everything. The deeper you get to the closer you get to the original works, and you have to dig for it, you're going to have to go meet people for it. Once you see the original works, your jaw drops because you find out what is real does not match what's being sold on the internet. What is real does not match what's being sold in books. And here, you know what the point is? The smallest, when an author is writing something, the tiniest embellishment starts a chain of events that causes the end product to be not authentic. It just messes up everything. And then when everybody starts reading a specific, version of whatever that story was, and that gets popular, then everybody believes in the popular version that's not based in truth. Does that make sense? Everybody adopts this popular version. As human beings, we're always fascinated by people who have facts about everything. We are. We're just taken by people who have facts. I am not. I know people who operate by facts, and they can tell me nothing new. They can't. They can only tell me what is. That's it. But they don't know what was, and they certainly don't know what will be. And I found something else out. Those who have a lot of facts are always wrong about their about tomorrows. They're not very good at seeing where things are going. They're not. And then they become wise in their own eyes, and they start off this steep cliff, right? So, but I like the original things. I do. And they're very difficult to come by. A lot of the original writings are protected by families. They're hidden. A lot of people hide that stuff. They don't want the world to find it and desecrate it, so to speak. They don't. But then that leaves many authors empty information, and so they make assumptions, and they have theories, and for the most part, what people have learned in this day and age about the world of the past is based on theory. If you go back in those authors' books, they should let you know. They should cite where they got their information from, and if you look back at those citations, you're going to find somebody who theorized dates, who theorized the culture, who theorized a bunch of things, which is almost useless. It really is, especially when you can have the truth. Remember that. You can have the truth. But something touched the entire world. There was an influence over the whole earth for some time. And many people have that similar story in their backgrounds. Number one, because of the fallen angels. And number two, because of Christ. Because of Jesus and his disciples. If it turned out that America a long time ago was in a trade zone, would that surprise you? Would it surprise you that you had Romans here in this land in America, that you had Egyptians here, you had Grecians here? Would that surprise you? Would it surprise you if it was the home of giants? America, the home of giants. Would that surprise you? In some text, America is known as the little brother. Did you know that? To somebody else. There's a story about American prophecy. The problem is, this land, America, in ancient times, was a land that people had to be very cautious coming to because of the giants. They were right here in this country. There were stories when people first got here, right? When they fought to the settlers broke away and they came here, they had to fight some mythical things right here in this land. The Vikings were here likewise, right? The Knights Templar. You go through history, you find a lot of people that were here, and those people never left. Something happened to the Vikings who came here. Something happens to the Templars who came here. Something happened to the Romans who came here. Something happened to the Egyptians who came here. So it's almost like they got in this land, and they traded maybe for a couple of years or so, and then they were gone. There's stories how people used to get eaten up from this land, and how people would quickly get away from this land as fast as they could. That's a true story. Those are many true stories like that. And sure enough, when you start looking at, especially with LIDAR, when you strip away the jungles and everything else from the USA, you begin to see America was settled a long time ago, and the ruins are still here, all over the place, right? All over the place. So anyway, there are truths about the places, all lands throughout the world. The problem again is it's very difficult to trust history. History written by ambitious people who want money, who get rich off others' fantasies, right? And it really is a razor thin line you have to follow when you're an author, because you can get tricked or manipulated or pressured into adding small theoretical pieces that people will then accept as truth. Give that a couple generations, and all of a sudden it becomes authentic, and nobody knows what the old ways were. I'm interested in the knowledge lost. I'm very interested in lost knowledge, because I see patterns everywhere, and everything mankind does, there are patterns. They're all telling the exact same story as the Bible, in my opinion. The fallen angels, same thing. That story, the fallen angels, happened right here too. The flood. There's a direct tie with America, Mexico, and the flood of Noah. And then, of course, the other people who also survived. How did they survive? How does the world flood? You go into an underwater cave and survive? Come on, that doesn't make sense. Unless you know about water buoyancy and things of that nature, right? But the Bible says there were Nephilim before the flood and also after that. That's what the Bible says. There were Nephilim before the flood and also after that. It's my firm belief there are Nephilim to this present day, this day that we live in right now. Then we get into the spiritual aspect of things. Okay. All of you have new equipment. Do you not realize that you can see spirits? I hope you know that. You can see spirits. If you have an iPhone, right? If you have a Samsung phone, you can see spirits. You can see them all the time. Now, but here's the problem. Let me tell you what the problem is. If you were to see spirits, your life is not going to be the same. You may not be able to handle those results. Right now, it sounds like entertainment. But I'm telling you right now, without modifying anything, you can see spirits with your phone devices. You don't have to modify anything. You don't. It's a few settings. That's all. And what appears is a translucent, humanoid figured thing or things that you will see. And always, it'll coincide with movement of smaller things you wouldn't even recognize. So yes, they can be seen, and they're everywhere. Now, I differ from most for a reason, but I do differ from most. Because there are some things that are mysteries to people that are not a mystery to me. There are certain things that are hard to believe for people, but I know they're real. I don't think they're real. I don't guess they're real. I know they're real. Right? I don't have to guess. I really don't. And I know that people, they're not really ready to live in a world where these things really do exist. It can become a bit overwhelming. It can. It also brings you into this. There's in the Bible when it says hell has enlarged itself. You guys know about that, right? So we know that was a saying. That was an impressionistic saying to us, that hell was made specifically for the angels that fell in the first place. Hell was not made for humanity. So hell had to enlarge itself so that it could begin to house those who were never supposed to go there. Who am I talking about? Mankind. Mankind. Cain killed his brother in the beginning, but did God kill Cain? No. He did not kill Cain. In fact, God said, if anybody touches you, Cain, I will require manyfold judgment upon their heads. See what I'm getting at here? God is kind. They trick you left and right. There are people that you guys have seen in the news. They never existed, ever. That's funny. That's hilarious. But they don't exist. Those people don't exist. Doesn't that sound crazy to say? That sounds crazy to say. Nobody would believe that, right? Nobody would believe that until they go and do a deep dive. So when both sides are betrayed, then people will straighten up again and hopefully remember their brother. and stop tormenting their brother. Because even right now, people are not seeing people as people. They see them as animals. They do. There are a lot of divisive things happening. Things we talked about in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20 that I prayed people would never be a part of. I asked people not to be a part of the violence. I told people the violence was coming on many different levels. And I prayed and asked and prayed and said it in many broadcasts. Don't be a part of the violence that's rising. It will be everywhere and through everything. But many have not opted to separate themselves from the violence in men's kingdoms. They have chosen another way. All right. It's time for Pass Ball, guys. I got to go. I'm going to say I love you. I'm going to see you guys next time right here at COT. God bless each and every one of you. I love those questions, man. You guys write your questions down so the next time I'm talking, you can throw them out there. All right? Can you do that? Can you do that? God bless each of you. I'll see you next time right here at COT.